something, someone can actually buy his insurance from his mobile. And we found out that the products become more affordable because for 50 cents, someone can actually buy a funeral product where he is actually given about $500 should anything happen. And we found that the take-up increases. It's something relevant for our people. We improve their standard of living, and we take care of their risks.
Good. Have you used, well done. Of course, have you used technology for reporting purpose in your company?
Patrick, essentially, in medical aid administration, it's all about data, data mining, understanding the trends. Remember, in our economy, medical aid is a one-year insurance product. You price it at the beginning of the year based on your estimate of benefits and claims, and then you have to track whether you are going to break even, make a surplus or a deficit, and that's where data and technology and data mining is so vital. It's an ongoing process, and I think that the technologies that are becoming available now in terms of access and manipulation of data. Previously, you had to go to the IT department, try to spec the program and say, this is what I need. Now it's on your desktop. Okay. And the effort is in asking yourself, what is the right data I need? Okay. And that's where CFOs play a vital role in saying, let's ask the right questions so that the data can become information and not just numbers.
Okay, good. We'll digress and move to another topic on saying, professionals, accountants in business, adding value or creative, especially at the board level. And before I pose a question to my two panelists, I'm going to introduce a third panelist who is not here. And I'm going to use a story of a girl I met recently called Sana. And Sana is a Maasai girl. My daughter was doing homework, and we had to go and do some research about Maasai, and we went to the Maasai land 3 weeks ago. And during that story, I discovered what I want to share with you and saying how some other professionals are creating value and enabling to solve some problem. In terms of the tradition of Maasai culture, if a man wants to marry a girl from a certain family for himself or for his son, he waits for one of the wives or one of the women in that family to fall pregnant. And at a specific time, he just visits the home and places a chain on that woman who has fallen pregnant. And that signifies that the man has booked that pregnancy. The man has booked the daughter or whoever is being held. And a relationship starts between that family and the man who has booked the pregnancy. And he starts bringing gifts to create that relationship. And as time goes by, if it so happens that a girl is born, he has booked that girl for marriage. And he will continue to bring more things towards that home. And that girl obviously is trained. They call it traditional education for a period of 10 to 12 years on how to look after and take care of a home. So I'm trying to summarize. But when age 10 to 11 comes in, the family would come and negotiate dowry, and they start paying for dowry. And the main dowry, they are paying the cows. To a Maasai man, cows are the most valuable asset that they can have, and the girls are then the generators of this wealth. And it so happens that by the age 12, 14, most of the Maasai girls are married away, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, there's a lot of socio and economic impact on those women. That's real tradition. Someone studied that model and said, I need to be creative. I need to create opportunities for these Maasai girls, and how can I change it? And this businesswoman changed her thought and said, I'm going to establish a school in Maasai land, which she did, a boarding school at primary school level. But instead of the men booking for the pregnancies, she is the one who visited the homes and booked for those children, but booked them for school. So she'd go and visit the home and pay the man saying, I booked for this girl, but when the time comes for taking them to school, she would pay like dowry. They negotiate and pays the dowry. Not all girls are booked at marriage at the time of pregnancy, but some continue later on. So she managed initially in year 2000 to get almost 100 girls and place them in school. And the story, I tend to think that's creativity, and I'm going to unfold the stories as we go along. So Mike Bothwell, you sit in the board. We always consider to be bean counters or number crunchers. In the previous sessions, we told that we don't take guts when there are serious business transactions that are being discussed at our board level. Share with the group, how do the rest of your board members consider you? And how do you add that value in the business? And be frank, we want to hear.
Yeah, I think obviously, firstly, you have to make sure that the books balance. There's cash to pay bills and people pay their cash. And making sure that the controls are there. I think that's basic. You cannot start looking at other things and gain respect for your colleagues when those aspects are still weak. So I think we don't apologize that we are being counters. We have to make sure that controls are there, cash is there. The other thing now is how do people look at you in a board? I think what I found out is you've got two types of finance directors. You can have one who is very keen to manage and make sure that his core functions of keeping the books, cash, and controls, and you are happy if you have got a clean audit report and you have signed off your accounts on time, you are happy, and then you get a pat on the back. But there's the other aspect, which is really getting involved in the business and going into the future. That aspect requires a lot of guts. It requires toughness. So you've got one set of accountants that are that, and then the second one is creating that toughness. And what I found is the toughness for accountants does not come naturally because our training is compliance, right? You audit and you have to make sure things are okay. So that toughness is actually calling for something bigger in you. So at the end of the day, you have to have it, and you can't force it on a person. But what I found is more and more, speaking for me personally, more and more, the board and your colleagues are looking for more. I've given you an example of hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. People are looking for solutions. People are no longer asking or looking for you to come up with all things that can go wrong. They want to say, right, Bothwell, you say this can go wrong. What are you going to do about it? So it's requiring us now to be more solution providers. And for that, what I found, I've had to make sure that, first of all, I need to be wider. I need to understand the business. I need to know how the whole business hangs around. I need to know the value drivers. But most importantly, it has required me to dig deep and look at what are the risks and what are the solutions. Okay. And once you start going on a solution thing, you are putting your head on the block. That means it now calls on you to be visible, to be more affirmative. And over a period of time, what I'm actually finding out is your business colleagues like that side of things. They want the person who is going to give the solutions. They want to hear you speak. They want to hear the voice. And if I can give advice on there is, as accountants, let's find our voices. Let's be more assertive and let's talk.
Good. Let's find our voices. Same case with you?
Patrick, I agree with Bothwell that you have the traditional financial director, almost the corporate financial director. In private business, there's the business financial director, the person who has to evaluate, be able to evaluate constructively and not be the block in front of business. Constructively evaluate business proposals, embrace them, and go make them work. And I think this is where CFOs need to have a far broader range of skills than just simply financial reporting. It is in contract negotiation. It is in arbitration. It's in understanding the legislative frameworks. It's in social networking. So this role, particularly in private enterprise, in smaller businesses, you're not just the corporate CFO. You're actually part of the business team that must be driving new business.
Okay. But do you think most of the professional accountants, especially in finance director level, understand that notion? And especially understanding where we are going to by 2050, assume. And are we prepared then for that role?
Patrick, it's a difficult, I mean, I talk to a lot of colleagues. Their colleagues that are happy with the traditional role. They say, Botho, why should I worry? Business is for the other guys. So I think there are two things that can happen to prepare ourselves. First of all, it's coming to congresses like these that we need to work ourselves up and say, guys, what are we doing? Are we going to continue with the old role, or we've got something more? I believe we've got a lot that we can give. Our training gives us the ability to understand numbers. It gives us the ability to be analytical. The thing is, how do we integrate that to be business drivers and to be taken seriously in a board? And it also talks to changing or adding to the curriculum of our finance training at university level to give that other aspect. I'll give you an example. I'm involved in an organization called Enactus, and I'm sure some of you have had experience with this organization. And Enactus, what they do is they do sponsor a competition for university students. It used to be called Students in Free Enterprise. What that organization does is it promotes that university students come up with projects that will help the societies that they are living in. And those projects have to be adjudicated at national level, and they've got a World Cup that comes on to at the end of it all. And most of the students that come into these Students in Free Enterprise are business and accounting students. I've had the chance to adjudicate at some of the competitions. It's amazing what those students do come up with in terms of conceptualization of businesses, in terms of business skills, as they prepare for that competition. And a number of those projects have actually ended up helping communities where they've developed them. And I think that's the kind of, we need to give more of that in our universities, really to inculcate the business side of things so that there's a full integration of the analytics that we are taught and the auditing, and also saying how can that be brought together for the betterment of business and also to create new businesses.
Okay, good. I was talking to a colleague yesterday and trying to think about how do we create this accountant for 2050? How would they look like? And I remember when you attended the World Congress of Accountants, one of the critical themes was that the accountants were we always used to sit in the passenger seat, just observing as things happen. But more and more, we need to be on the driving seat. We need to be the guys who are setting the strategy of the company and also trying to help in terms of the implementation. And I think that notions need to come to most of our minds and in most of our activities within the organizations. But the question still remains, we are members of the professional accountancy bodies in this room. How are we creating that type of mindset, and how are we creating that skill by the people who are in the pipeline? And I want to ask a colleague I was talking to, Jonathan Bewe from yesterday. Just bring a mic to Jonathan in the front here. You can just stand. Just to share with me the thoughts you had yesterday on how can we create the accountants of the future. Guys with the mic, please try to rush. Yeah, sorry. And as we prepare for Jonathan, I'm going to give my panelists a break, and I want to come back to you based on the three topics, thematic areas we've covered in terms of the African growth and the shocks, technology, and the relevance of the accountancy profession. I just want to hear from four of you in case there are any tips that you would want to share with the rest of us on how you've taken and applied some of these roles for the benefit of the communities where you live. Jonathan, go for it.
Thank you, Patrick. My name is Jonathan. I'm from ACCA. I had the privilege of sharing some thoughts with Patrick yesterday, and it was about moving the discussion a little bit further to how we develop accountants for the future, and what role professional bodies like ACCA and indeed those PAOs in countries where they're involved in examining and training our future accountants, what role we can play to make sure that we do produce accountants that are fit for the 21st century. And two things came to mind. One is developing leaders, business leaders. And when I see Kus and Bothwell, I don't see accountants. I actually see business leaders. And I think from a professional body point of view, we need to be moving more towards developing business leaders. We still need to equip our accountants with the technical skills, but by the time you become a CFO, a finance director, you are no longer an accountant. You are a business leader. So this is where perhaps professional bodies like ACCA and other POs can actually play a good role, a significant role in the future. But the second thing that I also think we need to bring on board, and of course you referred to that earlier on, is technology. And from a professional body point of view, we need to start thinking of how we examine, how we assess future accountants, especially the young ones, to make sure that the way we develop them does reflect fully the way they live and work today. And today, the future accountant lives and works around technology. And that's where I thought perhaps two areas which we can help to contribute into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So once again, use of technology and developing business leaders. Of course.
Patrick, I think the question almost needs to start, and we need to ask ourselves, what is business going to look like in 2063? It will be a fact that it will be highly technology-driven. I believe that we'll still have IFRS, but you'll probably have automated systems that generate the financial statements with relatively minimal input. I believe that the accountants of 2063 are going to be able to talk to one another in their own language by putting a small earbud in that will translate from English to French to Mandarin. Interaction, human interaction, is going to be one of the fundamental aspects of business and trade in 2063. Accountants will be part of that. So putting a curriculum, the 2063 curriculum, I believe it's going to have psychology, politics, economics. Certainly there'll be accounting, but it's going to be far broader. And I think that's where we need to start preparing. If you want to know what your customers of 10 years' time are going to look like, look at what your children are doing. Most of us don't understand what they're doing on their cell phones. But that's the customer of the future. He's going to expect to interact with his service providers on his technology. Take that 20 years' time, and it might be completely different. And so what I'm saying, Patrick, in terms of the professional bodies, the PAOs in Africa, the international accounting organizations, I think they are well aware of some of these trends, but we've got to do a stretch vision and say it's going to be quite different in 2063.
Yeah, if I may add on what Kus has said, I think the accountant of 2063 then will also have to be very aware of what information is going to be required to drive businesses. I'll give you an example. How many of us as accountants take interest when there's a national statistics that is carried out, when the government counts people? How many of us take interest to read those reports? What's in there? Very few of us. I think the future is going to require us to look at those numbers and actually be thinking and saying, what's coming out? Right now, I mean, we were discussing last night that in my country, close to about 50% are guys or young children who are 18 years and below. Those guys are coming. What are we doing to prepare our businesses as accountants? Because definitely that wave is coming. The next thing that Kus has said, in our businesses right now, how are we configured to take graduates that are coming out of university that are not used to doing things on paper as accountants? How are we preparing ourselves to do that? Yet we still do things on paper. So what I'm trying to do is to say to ourselves is, as the world is moving, we need to be more affirmative. We need to know what statistics, what information do we need, and how that information is going to impact on our businesses. Use our analytical skills to analyze that information and come up with impact on your business. Because the accountant of 2063, I think, is going to be more of an information provider, where everybody is coming into your office and saying, look, what's happening? And you're actually saying, I know there's been an earthquake somewhere, and this is how it's going to impact. Guys, what are you doing about this? I spoke to the Minister of Finance, and there's likely to be budget deficit is going to be 5% instead of 2%. How is it going to impact on your businesses? So that you are very much on top of things, because the business is going to be so fast. It's people who are going to be able to anticipate what's going to happen and prepare that are going to succeed.
True. Thank you both well. So I guess from all of us professionals and PEOs, as we prepare our strategies going into the future, we need to be asking the question, how will the businesses look like? And using the 2016 as AAU Africa strategy timeline, go back. And what type of information would we require then? And that can help you to shape your strategy on how then you develop the accountants who are in the pipeline now and those who are going to also to get into the pipeline to be professional accountants in future. As I mentioned, I wanted to give an opportunity to you just to share your tips for now. So in case there are 3 or 4 people who are in the crowd who want to talk of anything to do with technology that want to share with the group, or how they have dealt with shock within their own company, we can use this opportunity. Any takers? Okay, there is one here and someone here too.
Thank you very
Please
much.
keep it short, please. Yeah. Okay.
I'm Professor Omani Entry, the president of Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana. I've been a teacher for the last 36 years. And for me, to train accountants for the future, I have a simple model. I call it training dual agenda leaders. That is, leaders that, one, accountants who are going to be leaders and are concerned for value for money. And 2, accountants who are leaders and are concerned for society. They have values, and they have values and so much concern for society. And how do you do that? You actually hone in on the 3 talents that we all must have. That is why I say you need to transmogrify the accountant by honing in the 3 talents. The first talent is your striving talent. That is where you develop the passion to do things as an accountant. And that is where technology and whatnot will come in. Passion for technology, passion for change, commitment and whatnot. Your striving talent is needed. Then your second talent is your thinking talent. And that is where you need to think outside the box and not doing the same old thing. We are found in 2 worlds, debit and credit. That is gone. We must move away from that particular world and think outside the box. Then the third talent is what we call the networking talent. The 21st century, those who will succeed are those who can network. If you cannot network as an accountant, you will never be able to succeed. So for me, PAFA, IFAC should look at this model, training dual agenda leaders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good tip. Just
Wale Raji is my name, ICANN. I would like to talk from 2 perspectives. One is the PAO, which is developing the business leaders as accountants. As an institute, we have 2 or so movements that currently are targeted at developing our members into future business leaders in our country. We have what is called the Chartered Accountants in Business, in which case we try to aggregate ourselves and try to link this set of people to successful business leaders, be they accountants themselves, be they non-accountants, and get them to mentor this set of people in the ways business is done.
Okay.
That way, we're able to develop 1, 2, 3 people who begin to have interest in not being accountants, but being business leaders themselves.
Okay.
We also have a movement which is chartered accountants in politics. The intention is to develop our members into drivers of the nation. Let them be in position of legislation. Let them be in positions of driving the economy, beyond being the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Economic Development Affairs. We ask you to go into politics, and the Institute certainly try to support them in one way or the other to make sure that this set of people find their way into the streamline of politics and begin to develop themselves as part of the legislature for the country. That way, we can then begin to influence even these issues of corruption. As most of our members begin to filtrate the legislative arm of government, they are able to get their voices into bills and discussions so as to solve this problem of corruption. The last bit of it is, in my organization, I work for Shell. One way that we make our accountants to become useful beyond being accountants is that we have a term called accountants in the line. What do we mean by that? You are an accountant supporting a process. You don't sit in your office as an accountant. You sit with the technical guys, with the business owners, and begin to understand, how do we drill a well? What is the components of drilling a well? What is the process? How do I go about it? It is in understanding that you'll be able to do your numbers in the most appropriate way. And also, in doing that, you yourself, suddenly over the years, become a well driller. And when you are now talking at management meeting, people don't see you again as an accountant. In fact, they want to see you because you are not giving two perspectives to an issue that is on the table. You are now contributing first very closely as a technical person because you have been there, you've studied them, you understood them. And lastly, you also have the ability to turn those technical information into numbers for the better understanding of the meeting that you are in. So that is another way of making our accountants more useful, more oriented towards getting the business done than just counting numbers. Thank you.
Good. Those are very useful tips, I guess, and we've all learned of them. Okay. Any other taker? I'm willing to take one more.
I'm from the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, hailing from Zambia. I'm a CFO of an international bank there. I think 2 points that I would like to add as my contribution to the discussion. When you get to the level of CFO, I think it is a given in this day and age that we're living in that you become a strategic business leader. And you're no longer an operative, ticking and bashing debit and credit. That is for your troops to do. You are the general who is providing an eagle's eye perspective of what is happening across the business. In the institution that I work for, we have business leaders heading corporate banking, retail banking, and the specialized businesses that contribute to the attainment of our goals. Who is the de facto deputy to the MD, or who is the de facto person who's the sounding board to the MD? It is me as CFO. And by virtue of demonstrating those skills of being a business leader, understanding the business from all perspectives, all the processes, people, systems, strategically we are well positioned as people who have a broad perspective of what is happening in our businesses.
Okay.
The second point I would like to talk about is the integrated planning aspect. I think now accountants should be evolving away from a zero-based budgeting approach. Your budgeting, for instance, should be based on a strategic plan. The numbers that you're churning out in terms of a budget should be based on strategies to which you are a key contributor. when businesses present strategies in terms of, or are formulating individual business strategies, your input is to be the sounding board for the company. What assumptions are they making? What value is being driven? What products are they investing in? What pricing? What business segments? And we should have the ability of giving that business perspective to the strategies that individual business units are formulating. Third and final point, I think, is around investment in management accounting. There's questions lingering around is, what are we supposed to do now or for the future? The solutions are there now. Invest in management accounting. Management accountants are accountants, not to discount to say that we are all accountants, but management accounting is a principle that focuses on driving business value. Let us take the management accounting concepts very seriously. Let us take the business partnering concepts very seriously. And in terms of thought leadership, as CIMA, we have developed what are called the Global Management Accounting Principles. Take time to visit our website, read about what these 4 Global Management Accounting Principles are, and in terms of value addition, driving businesses, having a futuristic view, CIMA is well positioned to do that, or management accountants training or knowledge is quite valuable in that perspective. I just thought I should contribute that.
Good, thank you. It's obviously clear and clearer that our role is changing, and we need to change with time, and we need to create the right leaders or professional accountants who are going to fit within that role. The 3 colleagues have shared with us some tips of what we can consider at the professional accountancy level, and maybe those are things through the development, and even those people who have already qualified. I like the tips shared by ICANN, that you can think about chartered accountants in politics or mentorship processes. So let's take that into account so we can develop business leaders who are going to make changes in our own companies and create value for the members of the public. So let's change the topic. My panelists here, let's talk a bit about the reporting aspect. Bothwell, you invest in a number of countries at the moment. Just to be frank, and I would assume you rely on the set of financial statements to make that decision. Are the financial statements you're looking into currently relevant? Do you trust them? Is there more things that we need to do on this? And I'm raising this because we're all here preparing financial statements using standards. You're one of the users of that set of standards. You also sit on the other side, though, also preparing them. But are they relevant? Do we need to do something about it?
Yeah, Patrick, you've asked me a question. Do I trust the financials? Obviously, I do. I think the key, from my experience, is that having investments in many different countries, what I found that accounts that are prepared on IFRS are top quality. It's much easier to compare numbers in Botswana, numbers in Zambia, numbers coming from South Africa, numbers coming from Uganda. It makes it easier because the principles are the same. And secondly, what I found is because they're all IFRS based, the discussions and the conversations with various FDs is much easier because we are all talking or singing from the same hymn sheet. So the preparation is much easier because the principles are okay. The comparability when you're running the business is much easier because for you to run a business, you need to make sure that when we say turnover or I say gross written premium is this, I'm talking the same language across all countries. Yeah. So we are finding great value out of that. And then you step it further to the annual report, which is at group level that we publish at the end of the year. Is it useful? I think firstly, as a document, it is very useful. I've had many interactions with investment analysts that do come into Zimbabwe and want to look at our company. And they find it useful. All the information is there. The key then is to make sure that you are abiding by IFRS and then all the disclosures are there. The only thing that I would say needs to be improved on is firstly, the issue around is too bulky. My company, we tracked the size of our annual report. When we started off in 1934, and we looked at annual reports then, it was just 6 pages, with no notes to the accounts. Right now, our annual report is close to 95 pages, and with around about 50 notes to the accounts, not taking into account what we put into accounting policies and everything. So the issue is, are readers going to be able to read all that information? Or it's just going to be something that's going to be done just for compliance? What we've also found out is when you talk to analysts and also people who do come and interview us at our companies, is that most people now are looking for reports that give them an idea or that enables them to compute the value of the company, because ultimately that's what it is all about. So the information that is there, is it sufficient to calculate the value of the company? And most of them, what we found out that is, they do require a few things. They want to see the chairman's report because it gives them an idea of how the company has made its money and where it's going. They want to look at the 5-year history of the company, the historical, and also what you have done currently. They want to see more non-financial information. What is the story about this company? We are getting more and more of that. And yesterday I did attend a session on integrated reporting. And thinking through it, I think that's what investors are looking for, is a snapshot of what this business is all about. Like what was mentioned yesterday, that integrated reporting is like an octopus, where we've got the head and then the various tentacles. I think the annual report at the moment tends to concentrate on the tentacles.
Yeah.
And I think integrated reporting, I think, will go a long way to cover that gap. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Could I come in here?
Yes, of course.
Patrick, just picking up and maybe just branching out, I would be very interested to hear the position and the thinking of CFOs in the audience about the new audit report format. Because I think this is going to be an audit report format that brings great value to the shareholders, but is certainly going to place pressure on the CFO and the management team to make sure we know what is going to go in there and manage our response when the auditors bring it to us. So it's coming down 16 December 2016.
Yeah.
And it's facing all of us, a lot of us in this room. I'd be very interested to hear if there are any positions at this point.
Hopefully we'll get one person who can be able to respond to that. But Bothwell, I just want to come back to the issue of the integrated reporting. You operating in 4 or 5 countries. How do we do it? How do we enhance that our companies start moving towards that reform? What would be your thought? And what role can the POs contribute or play in this issue?
I think firstly, I look at it has to be almost like a movement. I mean, like the same issue around IFRS, how it was introduced. I think PAOs have to embrace integrated reporting, just like what the South African Institute has done. And we start driving it at that level. Definitely, there's a gap in terms of thinking around, definitely from my meeting yesterday. Some of us still think that integrated reporting is the same as responsibility accounting. It's totally different. So I think there's education that needs to happen, firstly at this level. And then we embrace that, and definitely I think PAOs can play a very significant role at that level. The second step is to actually start having conversations within particular jurisdictions in terms of how can we implement this. I would like certainly to have that kind of debate and discussion in Zimbabwe to say, look, how do we take this further? And I think once we've got that momentum, then it's easier as a profession when you are now pushing it for corporates to adopt it. So firstly, it has to be the PAOs at national level, yeah. and then us as accountants actually believing that is something that we would want to implement. And then thereafter, because at the end of the day, it's us we have to push it. Because if we don't believe in it and we say, look, you go into a board meeting and you say, guess what? There's another requirement. Your annual report was 100 pages. Guess what? It's going to be 105 pages. Obviously, people are not going to take it seriously. So I think it has to begin with us. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So I guess you're saying even us as the CFOs or accountants within our firms and at a professional body level need to drive this agenda.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a challenge we throw back to all of you attending this session on how can we all participate to enhance the reporting by adopting this reform, which, as you refer to, an octopus presenting information that our investors are looking for. Okay, just to digress from that topic, I'm sure most of the jobs as a finance director is also a pressurized job. There's a lot of things to do, from the reporting, observing the risks, and I want to pose this question to you. Where do you get your support from? Where do you run to empower yourself or to deal with some of these pressures? And let's just start from course for this.
Yeah.
CPD, CPD, CPD. Participation in your PAO committees. That's where you get the peer networking. You get the stimulation. And then you also need to look broader and say, where am I deficient?
Okay.
Particularly in my industry. Do I need to know more about the upstream side or the downstream side? And you've got to go and find that information either on the web or by going broader than your institute.
Okay. So CPD would be
CPD.
one forum for you. And what word from your side?
Yeah, I think I agree with Kusi, CPD. And the other thing that we've tried to promote as well in Zimbabwe is the whole issue of the CFO forum.
Good.
What I found out is, as CFOs, you spend a lot of time scratching your head on something that a guy has already solved yesterday. And I think it's one of our weaknesses, CFOs, is we sit in our own cocoons and we don't network. We don't stay connected. Other professions, the marketing guys, the engineering guys, there's a lot of collaboration. I think as CFOs, we need to network more, stay connected more. And what we've tried to do from an Institute of Chartered Accountants is to create a CFO forum where the guys meet on a monthly basis and we just discuss issues. Say, guys, what are the issues? And just stay connected. And added to that, participating in your PAOs is important. So I'll drive.
Okay, good. So again, CPD, CFO forums. I'm curious, just to come back to you, the panel, just to hear some 2 or 3 thoughts on how do you empower yourself as a CFO? Do you have some forums, or are there some innovative ideas of how you're empowering each other? And secondly, just to share a bit, how are you strengthening or improving the quality of financial statements within your own jurisdictions? Any takers, 2 or 3 comments, and maybe start from the gentleman who wanted to share something earlier on. The mics again. Yeah. Come to him first. Anyone else? I just want to recognize some 2 more people. Yeah, the second one here. Anyone else? Okay, there you go.
Thank you. I'm Daman Chumi. I'm from SEMA, Mauritius. I'm an FCMA. So it has been quite an interesting forum, this Congress, personally to me. And I would say that basically one of the issues that have been raised, I think we must stick to our, basically our personal values. I mean in terms of integrity.
Just hold the mic close to you, please. Yeah.
In terms of integrity, because we as accountants, if we are not considered to be honest in whatever we are doing, we are not going to get respect. So I think that basically we must, whatever we are doing in our daily lives, in our daily operations, I think it has to benefit to all the stakeholders. When I say all the stakeholders, it means the employees, investors, everybody, the government, everybody should benefit to what we are doing. And in everyday, whatever, in our everyday tasks, we will not be successful if we depend only on ourselves. Alone will never be successful. I am from the hotel industry, and I will tell you that basically, you have to deal with all the managers, with everybody in operations. Because if you don't get the collaboration of your colleagues, of your peers, you are not going to be successful. So while you are preparing budgets or whatever, if you think, I think that most of us, we finish at the end of the day on the table doing it ourselves alone. But you need the collaboration of everybody, the GM, everybody, whoever is working on.
Okay.
And I think that whatever in our also every day, basically, we are facing problems. I think that most of us face problems with cash flows. Okay. So if tomorrow you are running the business and you are having problem with cash flow, so you have to ask yourself the question, why are you having the problem? Where is it coming from? Is it your debtors not paying you? Or you are saying, okay, I will not pay my creditors. And then the issue of credibility comes in. Yeah. So we have to be able to, in order to be able to make sure that we are credible in whatever we are doing.
Okay, thank you. So it's about collaboration you're bringing on board and integrity of an accountant. Just the last. Sorry. The last comment, yeah. I want to come back to you, the final thoughts. Some final thoughts. Final.
My name is Otumba Owoyemi, former ICANN president and management consultant for the past 38 years. Now, in an environment like Nigeria or parts of Africa, where there's so much endemic corruption, the job of the CFO is extremely dangerous and difficult. It is up to each person to stand up and be counted on which side you are going to be of the island. You are prepared to be straightforward and do your work and risk being kidnapped, being killed, or your child, your wife being taken away from school. Yeah. A lot of CFOs are having problems with their children being attacked. They can be picked up in school and somebody will kidnap them and say, you pay $5 million before they can release the wife that has been kidnapped. Yeah. But nevertheless, it's up to each person to be courageous and to agree that at the end of the day, you are going to answer to your Almighty God for your actions. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Fair enough. Both well, have you faced such circumstances, and what tips can you share with the team around here?
Yeah.
Dealing with corruption. Taking the stand.
Yeah, I think I was quite inspired with the first session that we had. And really it was calling for our inner being and also the issues around our core principles. I think as accountants, I think we should live by our core principles, which are really the issues of integrity, transparency, conservative, and also consistency. I think that is what will see us through on that. And if we try to live by those personal values, I do agree, like what Ignatius said, there are risks, but we have to stand for something on that. And also the other issues that really pin down our profession is really the whole issue around ethics. And I still recall when I was doing accounting, the issue is you must not just be ethical, but you must be seen to be ethical and also independent. I think you should try and abide by those. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. What would you share goes from how taking a stand as an accountant against corruption in your organization?
I think many of us sit not only in our own organizations, but in other organizations. And I think we bring the expertise around governance, policies, and procedures. And there are times when we need to insist on these being applied properly. Sometimes a board meeting extends because it's just waffling. Then you have to cut it short. You have to say, let's get to the point. This is the business. You have to make sure that the minutes properly record decisions. You need to make certain that the committee structures work properly. And sometimes we get lazy.
True.
And I think that's where as on an ongoing effort, not only in your own organization, but in the soccer club where you're part of the committee, make sure that the age of your soccer players is all under 19 and you don't have some 25-year-olds. It's at these practical levels of our community where we carry the banner of ethics.
Good, thank you. And I trust what we've been sharing with the colleagues here is a whole range of 4 or 5 thematic areas on. We are the CFOs, we are within our own countries. There's a lot of positive development, or what I consider to be the time of plenty. There are shocks which are affecting us. There are technology changes affecting us. We have capacity issues we need to develop. There's regulatory issues we need to deal with. And the question still remains, at our own individual level, at a company level, at a PAO level, how can we be innovative to take into account those environments and create value for our stakeholders, and in particular to make changes and connect it to the people. And to finish the story I had earlier on, Sana happens to be one of the girls who joined the school I referred to earlier called Naningoi, through the creativity of this businesswoman. And when we met her 3 weeks ago, she's currently finishing her university in her 4th year in the University of Nairobi. And her main aim is to go back to the Maasai land and become a teacher. And she says she wants to be a teacher so she can become a role model to the other girls. And of more importance, to be able to change the mindset of the fathers who are in the rural areas to say that, yes, you consider cows to be the main wealth, the main asset, but education can turn out to be a better asset for you because I'll get a job and I'll come back and help many other people within the Maasai community. And I challenge you and I hope the tips that you've shared with you through Bothwell and Coase have been of help to you and we can go and implement them back within our own countries. And all that remains is just to thank my 2 colleagues and thank you for the tips that you've shared today and everyone else who's contributed. Thank you so far. Good. Back to you.
So, we're nearly done. I would like now to, be moving on to our closing ceremony. We will have 4 takeaways from the 4 partner institutions, main partner institutions. That is the African Development Bank, the IFAC, the World Bank, and the PAFA. So I will start with Jane Wameyo. I would like you to come on stage for your takeaway. Thank you. Yes, big round of applause for Jean. Come on, Jean, go, Jean.
Okay, thank you very much. This has been a very exciting session. And on behalf of the African Development Bank, I'd like to give a few takeaways or lessons learned. A number of the issues that were discussed at the ACOA resonates with the agenda of the African Development Bank, and more specifically, the African Development Bank's 10-year strategy. So there's so many things to pick out from the sessions that I attended, but I will just summarize into 5 key points that I will take away. Take away meaning that they're the things that resonated with me very strongly and the things that I will do something about. One of the initial takeaway for me was something the Prime Minister said in his opening remarks, and that was that a strong accountancy profession is really a key part of the development ecosystem. And the fact that, and why does it resonate with me with the work that we do, is the understanding that the success of a country depends on the strength of its institutions. This was one of the things that he said. And in the work that we do and will continue to do together with our partners is to ensure that in each and every country, we're able to establish PAOs, and where there are PAOs, to establish PAOs where there are none, and where there are, to work with them in the strengthening, because it also helps the development agenda for which we feel very passionately about. The second thing that was actually quite exciting in the way the ACOA was organized in the different issues was really the increasing convergence between the private and the public sector. In some accountancy meets, you'd find people talking just about public sector issues, in others about private sector issues. But here I found an increasing convergence between the two, and the understanding that even for us as accountants, there is space at the table when we talk about, for both of public sector accountants and private sector accountants, when we talk about development and economic issues. And this is something of interest as well to us, and it's something that we will take over. Very interestingly, one of the things that I liked, every time we talk about the South-South cooperation, we are mostly thinking about some of the emerging countries out of Africa cooperating with countries in Africa. But I noticed when I listened to the Anand presentation, it's one of the presentations that hit me so much is that we can have amongst ourselves our own, I don't know what we'll call it next time, but our own South-South cooperation. And when they were talking about supporting the accountancy profession, not just within Nigeria, but also within other nations and other nations around them, Togo, Benin, the Francophone, etc. Mauritius, talked, again, the PM talked about some issues about as an African continent, how we can cooperate amongst one another, especially the intra-trade. And lastly, just the regional integration in the East African community that was indicated when we had the session that discussed about the integration between Kenya, Rwanda, and the countries in that particular block. So it is something that, again, resonates for us because one of the things that we believe in is regional integration, not just from a structural integration, but also the soft issues relating to the accountancy profession. It's one of the things that I will take away with me. Fourthly, there was the issue about Africa speaking with one voice. And it is for this reason, like I said in the first day in my opening remarks, that before the creation of PAFA, it was actually very difficult to decide who really does speak for the Africa accounting profession. And when we were discussing at the level of the African Development Bank and wanting to support the accountancy profession, the issue was who is the one that speaks for the accountancy profession. And we know that PAFA is not yet there. And I know, like, as members of PAFA, a lot of you have issues, but together with our partners, and more specifically the African Development Bank and IFAC, we want to continue working together to strengthen PAFA so that as an accountancy profession, we're able to speak as one. And Renaud and I have been having discussions about what we are going to do, as a matter of fact, after this session, more particularly in bringing in very strongly the PAOs or the accountancy profession from the French-speaking countries. Last but not least, it was very exciting to listen to the session this morning about the anti-corruption agenda, money laundering, illicit financial flows. I'm sure my president, Dr. Kaberuka, would have been very pleased to sit at that panel and just contributing to those sort of, to the discussions that were heard by the eminent people that we had on the panel, because these are the issues that we as Africans need to work about. So one of the things that we would want to do, my colleagues and I, is to be, in this particular session, it's a session of accountants. And at the African Development Bank, we're actually a session of many different professions doing many different things because we're all part of an ecosystem. And one of what we would like to see is to see accountants sitting at the table discussing economic and development issues, not just amongst themselves, but amongst the politicians, amongst the economists, amongst the engineers, being able to discuss the things that we're all doing together to make sure that we leave a better generation for the children that we will have and the grandchildren after them. And so what we'll try and do between my colleagues and I, picking on the networks that we have created over the past week, is to be able to see how we can how to increase those networks. So I've spoken to many of you, and some of you, I'll take up some of the things we have discussed, talking to my colleagues who handle different things in different sectors, so that the accountants can also be heard at the table and have a space at it. So thank you very much. Oh, actually, last but not least, I've actually enjoyed Mauritius as well. And hopefully tonight and tomorrow, I'll have a chance to see something more about this beautiful country. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call Renaud Seligman from the World Bank now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I wonder, have you been hearing the roar of the African lion over these past 3 days? Or has it been maybe subdued? Or maybe what we have seen is a continent on the rise. A continent on the rise, but that still has many challenges. And let me leave maybe 3 points with you as we reflect on the very rich debates that we have heard since Monday. The first one would be to go back to that map of the world with the African continent in the middle, showing the part of the world where there are the fewest professional accountancy organizations that are properly capacitated, that are full members of IFACs in good standing with their obligations. If we want to help this continent continue to rise towards emerging economies, continue to rise towards shared prosperity, it will not happen unless we collectively do what we need to do to ensure that when we reconvene next year,